Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the introduction, but just as a reminder, my name is Melanie Nerona. I'm a principal at Economist Impact, the Policy and Insights Division of the Economist Group, and I'm pleased to be moderating this session with our distinguished panelists to get a glimpse into what keeps you up at night. So we've got 18 minutes and counting, so I want to jump right into it. Mustafa, I'll start with you. Now, modernization is such a big theme in banking. Can you tell us how you're approaching this really holistic transformation? Really, what are the trade-offs there?
Yeah, first of all, good morning, and it's a pleasure to be back here in Abu Dhabi. Maybe just some context about State Street. We are a unique bank, slightly different from the other bank you know. We are a globally systemic imported bank. We are the smallest globally systemic important bank, but we have a very narrow business model. We do only investment management. We manage 4.5 trillion of assets, and we do asset servicing, where we keep 45 trillion of assets. Our clients are exclusively institutional investors. We provide them with investment solution, operational support, banking services, and technology and software. Why it's important to your question, that educate a bit how we look at transformation. We've been in business for 235 years, so we've been through a lot of phases of transformation. But the way we look at it is threefold. Number one is how we transform our operating model. Our clients expect us to innovate on their behalf. So in that respect, how we expand our solutions, technology, services, and geographies to be able to support them as they grow. The second element is how we transform our operating model and technology as the backbone supporting our business strategy. And last but not least, how we transform the way we work and our culture. And in that respect, speaking about talent, culture, innovation, agile, it's a paramount now for transformation. To your question about trade-off, I would just summarize in a few points. One is striking the right balance between legacy and new. Banks has been sitting on legacy platform for a while. It's not a bad thing, because it's working, it's safe, it's scalable, it's proven. The tipping point to move and leapfrog to new technology, attract new risk and new challenges we need to understand. The second trade-off, what I call responsible innovation. As we enter the Gen AI and new technologies, as a bank, we are the more prudent part. I always say we are not Google, so we'll be less the first mover, but we need, again, to adopt with acceleration this new technology in a responsible manner, because we are sitting on 200 years of trust relationship. And last is how we allocate resources for all the above. So that's how we look at transformation and challenges.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for setting the scene there. And I think the idea of responsible innovation is so important. Now, I want to delve into AI. I think we can't have a conversation today without talking about AI. And so I want to delve a little deeper into that part of the transformation. Now, advanced technologies, especially AI, seem to be very effective for data management, for fraud detection and prevention, for managing regulatory compliance, but it's also a significant investment. How do you balance these?
First of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Melanie, for having me today. I think it's important that we understand how the world is changing, and the world has changed quite fast. And in every decade, there is always a keyword which, as you said, we cannot have a discussion without talking about it. And in today's world, I think AI is the word. I was actually corrected in one of my recent trips. It's now Gen AI, right? So AI is even becoming slightly more outdated. But I think it all goes back to how you serve your client better, right? Particularly in the financial service industry, we should not forget that everything at the end falls to the client. How do we become more approachable to the client? And Gen AI helps us, first of all, to better understand what the client needs, and accordingly, we build our capabilities around how we are always almost 2 steps ahead of how we tell or inform the client or advise the client what is best in terms of the next steps. So you asked the question, how do we invest in Gen AI? I think it's important that most of our investment now, we have built a strong platform from a digital transformation perspective. We have the power of data, and Gen AI sits on top of it. So you already have a lot of basics, fundamentals to build on how you can take it forward. We've and Adib recently announced what we call Vision 2035. And it's quite uncommon that the bank puts a vision 10 years out, but we decided as a management team, our vision for 2035 will be to ensure that Adib moves towards a bank which is powered by Gen AI, by Adib Ventures and partnerships to ensure that we're always 2 steps ahead of the market and serve our clients better.
Fantastic. You said a really important term about ventures and partnerships. We heard earlier in a panel that before used to have only a limited number of partners, but today the pathway to innovation is really driven by partnerships with technology firms, with fintech firms. And that's really my question to you, Mustafa, which is really about, sure, you have to work with a host of partners now, but that also exposes you to data security risks, right? How are you navigating those?
First, I would say we love partnership, and we love innovation, and we love fintechs. I think there are a lot in the room. I think we need to have this humility. We are not always the smartest people in the room, and we cannot always build that innovation. So creating an ecosystem which is safe, innovative, ready for innovation, and partnering with the right people to bring that to our client is an important strategy for us. The way we look at it historically is we build the backbone, what we call our Alpha platform, which is front-to-back, State Street-owned systems and platforms. And the idea is sourcing the best technologies and partners to come and complement this offering and accelerate, I would say, time to market to bring innovation to clients. To your point about risk, yes, it doesn't come without risk and without challenges. And there is a higher scrutiny from regulators, by the way, to this third-party risk, and impacting all banks. So number one is how you create this model management risk, allow us to host those third parties, to oversee due diligence, look through understanding what they do, how they do it, how they run their data privacy, how they run their cyber security, how they run in change management, their resiliency. It's becoming more and more an element of selection in all partners or providers you may use. Second is we are accountable for our client data as a bank. So if we use other partners, we are accountable for this data too. So how we build these bridges in which we protect the data for our client while we have other players in the ecosystem. And third, again, is alignment of management. In a way, when we work with organizations, smaller or bigger, how we bring experience, helping them step up to the right level of security and knowledge we need them to be. And last but not least, as the regulation is getting more, I would say, stringent, and the world is getting more complex, a lot of threats, having fewer, deeper relationships is the answer to the question. Fewer, deeper, selecting few partners in space and invest in that partnership long term, address some of the challenges I just mentioned earlier.
Fantastic. I think there's a lot of lessons there for institutions like yours, so thank you for sharing those insights. I want to circle back to something you said earlier about keeping the client at the center. Customer management is such a big facet, of course, of what you do. And again, in an earlier panel, there was a big discussion about hyper-personalization, which customers now expect, right? But at the same time, there's, again, that consideration of data privacy and security. How are you balancing that?
Very good. And I think it's a very important part because it goes hand in hand. You cannot have one of the two. You have to ensure that when you are building a customized, personalized experience, it can only happen if you have access to data. But then there is a responsibility of how you ensure that the data is protected, because success brings success. Once the client has the confidence that his data is protected and he gets the service, more and more will be buying into it. And if you don't mind, Marian, I just want to touch on one of the points Mustafa mentioned, is that the important part is that how you succeed in this world is that you almost have to imagine the picture or how the picture will look like in the next few years. And the picture can then be split into a puzzle. I would say, call it a puzzle. And everybody is actually a piece in that puzzle. So banks are a piece in that puzzle, fintechs are a piece, the regulator, the client, the data privacy. If any of these pieces do not add up to the bigger picture, it will not work.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where it's important that you need to know where is your part in that bigger picture and how you bring others together because one piece missing the photo will not be complete or the picture will not be complete, basically.
Right, right. But how are you, again, how is your bank thinking about hyper-personalization?
Very good. So we are using, because we have the advantage of data, and we've done a lot of work in the past few years to build the infrastructure and fundamentals behind it. Now we are laying it over with the power of creating or mining the data to ensure that we create now what we call a behavioral theme for our clients and start to promote what is possible for the clients. So for example, our mobile apps, when you look at it, when you open the app, what I will see is not what you will see or what Mustafa will see. And that's all Gen AI, right? So it is what is important for you. I learned enough about your behaviors and what your needs are, and I'm able to push that even further.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think putting in guardrails around how that data is used for marketing, how that data is used in other facets for other solutions, I think is really important. I just want to follow on as well. Sorry, did you have a point?
Just maybe one point to what Mohammed said about data. It's important, the parallel, by the way. What I think we need now to recognize, the only part that doesn't change now is data. So application technology change. What stays consistent is the data. And the work, the investment all of us made around, I would say, analyzing this data, storing the data, controlling the data, having a governance around it, will be used for years to come. It's interesting, because that's maybe the long-term investment we will all keep. The application, the functionalities technology will offer will come and consume this information. So it's almost counterintuitive, because people want to get to the end state right away. In reality, this foundation building is critical not only for the next few years, but for likely the 10, 15 years to come. Because having this data organized in a way allow you to use it forever, whatever the new technologies offer as a capability and functionality in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want to pivot just to a final point on competition. I'm sure that keeps both of you up at night. And Mohammed, I'll come to you first with a question about how are you tackling competition from neobanks? Particularly as so many, because they are digital natives, they are potentially ahead of the curve in terms of providing data-driven solutions to customers. How are you tackling that?
I think this was a very debatable question for many years of how you look at neobanks. And my personal view is that, first of all, you have to accept the reality that they exist. Right? So they are there, and they have a very strong niche and a value proposition which traditional banks cannot almost compete with. So the solution for that is for us to understand where is our competitive advantage, how do we actually learn from neobanks, and how we transform ourselves into be able to create the bank of the future, what we call it, whereby we still have almost the best of both worlds, because we have an opportunity to become closer to the value proposition of neobanks, but the opposite is not true. Neobanks cannot come back and play in the space which is still actually unoccupied. And that's why we are embracing I would call it almost disruption to the market. We are positioning us accordingly, and we are using it as an opportunity, not as a risk. I'm
very curious, what is that space you define as the space that neobanks can't play in?
So I think neobanks, because the regulatory framework, the protection, the infrastructure, even the basics of physical presence, because we have to acknowledge the fact, as we transform more and more into a digital universe, there is still an element requirement as we move generations into physical presence. That is not available for neobanks. And then last but not least, the brand. Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with human beings. And human beings have a psychological element where they need to relate to an entity. And that is not existing in neobanks. We have that advantage. We have Adib as a big brand, for example, and we're building on that value proposition.
That's very interesting. I've heard that with other sort of established banks as well, that yes, I think convenience is great, especially for younger generation, but there is a human element, there's a trust element that maybe big banks have the edge in. So interesting on that front. But Mustafa, your thoughts on competition as well. How are you tackling competition?
Yeah, so we run a global business. Interestingly, for us, competition is other banks, software providers, third-party administrators, and that changed dramatically in the last 10, 15 years. We compete more and more in software pure. We compete in service. We compete in investment, in insight, in data, which create a good tension about us continuing innovating. 2 points, I think, to what Mohammed said, and I share completely. One is the trust element, the brand, and the brand is about trust. So people will always trust a legacy bank who can innovate because they have a relationship. They've been there before. They know it's secure. They know it's highly regulated. But you need to earn that right from a trust perspective, but as well not to be complacent about it from an innovation perspective. The other part, which is very interesting when you look at what is the asset, is the client relationships. Our business is becoming more and more platform business. The successful players in the future is owning the client relationship. Because if you are the platform owner, you are the one integrating. You are not a part of someone else's platform. You own the platform. So again, look at that competition as a challenging, healthy challenge about innovation. Not being complacent about your position, being built throughout trust. But maybe looking at competition sometimes as partnership, coming back to what we spoke about earlier, and integrating those solutions into the offering to end client, put you always in a relevant space to end clients.
Fantastic. We've just got a minute on the clock, and I just want both of you to look into your crystal ball, look out to the year ahead, and maybe just tell me the top issue, the issue that's top of mind for you going into 2025. Whoever wants to go first.
Sure. So maybe I can go first, yeah. So I think 2025 will be a very interesting year because we're coming from very strong momentum, and I'm cautiously optimistic that this momentum will hold. Obviously, some of the external environment changes or uncertainty will have to be looked at, but the important thing is that change has become BAU for us, and you just have to be agile enough to deal with these changes as and when they happen.
Fantastic. Change is business as usual. Mustafa?
I would say crossing the line in acceleration. I think we need the AI is creating huge opportunities, Gen AI a huge opportunity. How as banks we can move in a faster pace, but in a responsible manner. So creating that engine of speed, which allow us to transform our business in the future. And that balance between responsible and innovation will be likely the key challenge we had to address for 2025.
That's a great thought as well. I think we were in that experimenting phase, and now we want to accelerate. So wonderful thoughts. So ladies and gentlemen, you've gotten a glimpse into what's keeping these executives up at night. How you get any sleep is beyond me. But thank you so much for your insights. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our panelists for joining us here today.
Thank you,
Thank you so much. Thank you.